Okay, in the hero character, we can add the health component. You can find the component by searching health, and it's gonna show you the BP health component, right? So just click it, and you can see it has a few different stats. It has an effects, which basically what happens if you get hit. So you can actually see it by clicking on the magnifying glass button and just double click it, and as you can see, it's just a small splatter effect. Pretty standard, but quite effective. Okay, close it, compile, and you can see a few other stats. So that's the starting HP, which let's put it to 100, and that's the maximum HP. Basically, the difference between the starting HP and the maximum HP is maybe you want the players to start with less HP for some reason, but that's up to you. Can get knocked back. So can your player get knocked back when hit? I'd say that's a pretty big yes. Do you flash when hit? You know, like in most 2D games, if you get hit, you temporarily flash. Yeah, sure, why not? This is the flash color. You can customize it to your liking. This is the flash duration. I don't know, just put it like half a second. This is the invulnerability duration, so after you get hit, you can be invulnerable to further hits for a certain duration. What's the duration here? Let's put it to 1 second, and that's the knockback multiplier. So basically, when you get knocked back, you have a force applied to you, and this just multiplies that. Like if you want the character to be heavier, then you just reduce the knockback multiplier. If you want them to get knocked back a big distance, you can just increase it and have fun with it. So now that that's done, let's think about how we're gonna represent the player's health, because if you just play it, there's nothing really changing here. Like, he has a stat, he has health now, but there's no way for us to see how much health he has and how much he has left and when he takes damage and things like that. So for that, we need to add a widget that represents the health. What a widget is basically a piece of UI that we can link up to anything in the character, and we can make sure it tracks your health, and it updates the visual to do just that. So that's what we're gonna do next. We can take a look at the current widget that Pixel 2D has, just to learn a bit, but we won't be using them right now. We'll be making our own, since they're pretty easy to do and we can learn a lot through them. So to learn about widgets, just go to blueprints inside Pixel 2D and widgets, and everything's put inside the inventory folder. So just search for the BP main widget, which is basically, I'd say you can call it the HUD of the screen. This basically just contains the information about everything. So you can see we have the backpack information here, and the descriptors and the equipment and everything. And obviously we have the health, energy and gold information here. So as I said, you could use one of these, but we have so many and it's super linked together. It's easier just to make one to show you how, and we'll make one for the health. So what we'll have to do is to make another main widget, which basically will store all the other widgets, and another widget that's gonna store the health bar and the health text. Okay, so just close, you can close both of these. Let's go back to our Potato Paladin. Under blueprints, make a new folder called widgets, and let's create a new widget. I think it's under user interface, yes, widget blueprint, and let's call it BP main widget. Yeah, okay, that's done. Save it, double click to open it, and as you can see, it's just an empty screen. That's fine, because we'll be populating this with our health widget. So let's make another widget. Let's see, BP not health bar. Okay, cool. Double click to open it. Okay, right. So what we need is a progress bar. You can put it right here. And some text. To put it right here. Just make it smaller. Or at least that's what we would be doing normally, but this is not really a tutorial on widgets. I'm gonna link a few information sources and cool tutorials about widgets, but basically in our case it has a canvas panel. Now the canvas panel it's like a canvas where you can just chuck stuff randomly in arbitrary positions, and once you display it on the screen, it's gonna display in this, like this. Imagine it like this is the screen, and it's gonna try to put everything in appropriate positions, even if you you make the screen smaller and things like that. But we don't want to have a canvas right now. We want to have a very fixed and very precise health bar and HUD, so we can add it on the main blueprint widget. So we're just gonna delete everything. There you go, you just have the main widget, and instead of the fill screen we put a desired on screen, so it has we can calculate its exact values. So in order to make our health bar, let's now start adding to it, shall we? And for now let's add some boxes. Basically boxes are, they're just boxes. It's a container where you can put stuff. So we can add a size box, and it's gonna be put here, and default is 1 by 1 pixel, and we can change the width and the height. So let's put it like 500 pixels wide and 150 tall. Oh, this is still a bit too big, I guess. Let's make it like 50, I guess. Oh, there you go. That's a good size box. So now inside the size box we can add stuff. So we can add a progress bar, and it's just gonna fill automatically to the length of the size box. As you can see, it can go higher and lower and whatnot. But one of the issues with this size box is that it can only have one child. So if we want to have both the progress bar, which I haven't shown you, but the progress bar is just basically, give me a second, let's select the progress bar, and you can see here it has a progress and you can fill it. So this is really cool for a health bar. But we also want to have text, right? So basically, as I said, it only supports one child, but you have the overlay widget, which basically supports any number of children. So we can just delete the progress bar right now, add an overlay as a child, and now we can have add both the progress bar, and in our case we can have let's make it like horizontal alignment and vertical align. So let's make it to fill. Basically you have a lot of different options, as you can see, but it's just gonna fill the overlay, and we'll add a text as well. For the text, let's put it so it's straight down in the middle, or you can even put it like this, but I think we're fine like that. Cool. And now we have the basic building blocks. Let's give them a better name, shall we? Let's double click that progress bar. Any minute now. Health bar. Oh, not health bar. Okay, and the text. Text. Right, and for the health bar, you can move it like that just to see how it's gonna look. Put a nice color, like a reddish color. Great. For the text block, just see, I don't know, 50 out of 100. That should be good enough. This is just to see how it's gonna look. We're not actually gonna. It's not actually gonna display this all the time. So now what we have to do is find a way to correlate this and this between your actual health. So how we do this is by binding. Basically, binding creates a function and it updates every frame or every time the widget is drawn. And using that function, our aim is to extract the data from your health component and put it into the function, so the health bar and the health text can read it and display it accordingly. So to do that, just click on near the percent here. You can click on bind, and as you can see, you can bind many things. You can bind the color and opacity, you can bind the behavior, the visibility, and a lot of things, but for now we're just gonna focus on percent. So bind, create binding. This is just, the name is get health bar percent 0, which is fine for our case. Go back to the designer tab, same for here for the text. Create binding, it's gonna be get health text 0. So let's just give it a better name, get health bar percent, get health text. Yeah, that should be good enough. Cool. And now let's go back to the health bar percent. And how are we gonna actually get the information out of our health component? So for that we need to reference it. So let's create a variable and let's say health component ref. Basically this is just a reference for the health component you have or will have on your player. So let me make this easier. So it's gonna be a reference to this component, exactly. So here on the variable type, just search for health BP health component. So put it as an object reference, and we can make it instance editable and more importantly expose on spawn. So what this allows us to do is basically when we're gonna spawn this as a widget, we'll have a node directly available where we'll be able to plug in this health component into that node, so it will always reference the correct health component. So, but that's something we're gonna do later. For now, we're just gonna assume that the health component is the player's health component, even though you can add just about any other health component if you want to have on-screen health bars for enemies or things like that. That's fine, that's perfectly doable. But for the health component we have a couple of functions, and that's get current health and get max health. So based on this we should be able to get the percentage of life based on the current health and your max health. And how we do this is it's pretty easy. We first make it to int, so we convert it to float, and again, and we just divide it. So float, and that's it. Just by dividing it we should be able to have the correct health bar percentage, and this works on a value between 0 and 1, as you can see. So in the case that our current health is equal to the max health, then the value is gonna be 1, which is 100%, but if it's any lower then it's gonna decrease. Same concept for the health text. We just copy these two, paste them here, and now we want to have something similar to this, like x/y. We can just do an append, and what append does is basically you can combine strings together. So we'll just have this, and we're just gonna plug in this and this. Basically, a lot of times you can just drag a type into another type, and it's gonna convert them automatically if it can. So for now our health is integers, but the append only takes strings. But if you drag it here, it's gonna convert them automatically to strings, right? And the same for the return value. If we drag it here, it's gonna convert it into text automatically, which is similar to string, but you can localize it and you can do cool stuff with it, while a string is just a very simple text. It doesn't support localization or things like that. So technically, the code that we need to add inside the health bar is done. Now we just need to spawn the widget and reference the health component, and we should be good to go. Great. So let's go back here, not to your hero character. Let's go back to the other widget, which is the BP main widget, and let's add our widget, our health widget here. So basically, imagine this is gonna be your whole screen, and we can have user created widgets and add our own. Let's see which one. I think the BP health bar. Yeah, there you go. So you can add it here. Obviously you can move it wherever, but let's just add it near the top of the screen here. It's fine, doesn't have to be, but let's put it on a 20 by 20. There you go. So it's a bit more organized. And for the anchors, basically this is the anchor. Basically that means that, for example, if the screen changes size and whatnot, it's gonna be anchored here. We can put the anchor to the middle or to the top, or whenever. But if we want for it to try to maintain its position relative to the screen on the top left corner, we should keep the anchor to the top left corner, right? So that's it for the designer aspect of the main widget. Now all that we need to do is pass on the reference to the health component, because this is a bit more complicated, but it's so much usable. Because once we add more widgets like the inventory widgets and spells and abilities widgets, we'll be adding them to our main widget here, and they're all gonna reference at least some part of the character, and we need to take these references and feed them. So for example, the health bar requires a health component reference, right? And that means that it's gonna take the health component reference from here. And this main widget is connected directly to your character, and it's gonna take the main component reference to your character. So we need to create another variable and just call it the same health component reference. And we have to make it just like before. BP health component reference, and the same instance editable and expose on spawn. Great. And now what we have to do is to take this and set it as a reference. So get here. Okay, so what we did is we have our health component reference, that's a local variable here, and then we have our health bar, and it has its own health component reference, and in our case they're the same, so that's why we just have to plug it in. And basically whenever the health bar is gonna need the health component, it's gonna check the main widget, and it's gonna get this value. And the last step that we'll be doing right soon is just plug in our hero character health reference into the main widget. So we're almost done with this. Now all that's left to do is add this widget to the screen. So how do we do that? We go back to our hero character and we go check the event begin play, which happens whenever the game begins, basically. And now we have create widget. So for the widget, we're gonna create our BP main widget, which unfortunately I named this the same as the Pixel 2D main widget, so I have to double check that the path is correct, and it seems to be the right one. And as you can see, it now has the health component reference, which we can drag it here, and now it's gonna, and now the BP health bar can reference this directly, so it's always gonna know the exact value of the player's health. And now after this, we just need to add it to your viewport by add to viewport, and that should be it. If everything goes to plan, we should have a starting HP 100 out of 100. Let's see now, shall we? And tada! Our HP is 100 out of 100. Well, what if we change it? Well, let's see. Let's put it to 40 and let's put it to 89. Is that gonna change? Yes, as you can see, it changed. So we now both the text updated and the health and the progress bar updated. So that's great.